Where in the scriptures does it say to feed your children? So the silence of people's, it's like, well, but it's assumed that the righteous man does. In fact, it's assumed that the evil man feeds his children, isn't it? And in fact, the man who doesn't is worse than the infidel. So there are implications in the law on what it says and what it doesn't even have to say. For instance, it is not a call to create or invent institutions, the Ten Commandments, and that which is outside of it. And while the law does classify a strata of persons, so it does classify individuals, it does not give a call to create new strata or classifications, but rather it's a call to personal obedience. Each man carries with him equal responsibility to the law as a person affected by it. Psalm 119 says in verse 11, "Thy word have I hid in my heart, that I might not sin against thee." Now these are the words of a king of Israel. And I don't think they're any less true should he have written them before he was the king or after. He was the archetype of the Christ, right? He was a picture. He is a man subject to the laws of God, only specially singled out for extra regulation and not less. As the anointed of God, he had no power or authority to legislate. He didn't even have the authority to number the people. So in 1 Samuel 8, you knew I was going there, right? Verse 5, and we all know that chapter. And I just single that one out, and you guys can fill in. You've read it. You know the rest of it. It says, and God had said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now, the children of Israel were saying to Samuel, and said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. So they were asking for something that was like the nations. They did not want a normal king, a leader of men who arises as of need. There were kings, but they did not, they only led. They might try to legislate, but in doing so, I believe they were, tyrants. They were not within the law and the righteousness of God to legislate. To lead is one thing, to legislate is another. They further did not want a sovereign king who was this king among kings. Their actual deliverer who had delivered them so many times in the time of the judges. Consider, I believe, that the longest time period that they were under oppression was 18 years. How long have we been under oppression? How many years of peace did they have in a row? It was a peaceful time in Israel's history, actually. A very peaceful time. But that's beside the point. They just came out of that history, right? And he was this God up in heaven. They couldn't see him, and his rules were just too restrictive. Possibly. I'm kind of postulating here what they were thinking. They wanted these kings. They were asking for a human sovereign king endowed with the authority to make rules and force men to obey them. They needed a king who had the authority to act outside the law in the interest of safety and security, of course. He would never abuse such a thing. I don't know why they would ask for such a thing, but they had to have known. But I'm just postulating some of this stuff here because I think that's fairly close to what was going on. Only such a thing would be a safe bet in today's dangerous world, to have this human king. He could save us. Plus, all the other nations had them. So I guess it was kind of that argument like your kids have, right? Israel should have one too. They could be more respectable among the nations. This is a significant departure from the laws of God. He did not institutionalize kings. And certainly they could not legislate, or this king, or be above the laws of God, which is the very nature of a sovereign. He is above the law. He makes the law, but he is not subject to the law. I want to, define that for you.